Um, should we just jump right in today?
Yeah, yeah, let's do
How
it.
about if we just each briefly introduce ourselves and go from there? Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Lisa Jensen, and I write Wild Ground on Substack. And I'm a poet, I'm a novelist, and a single mom of three, which is always a big adventure, and a few other things besides. But those feel like kind of the big ones.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm Maya, and I am behind a publication called Justice on Substack, and I share poetry, reflections, insights into the self-publishing process behind my poetry book, most of which was inspired by my journey healing through illness 3 years ago. And I recently published my first poetry book called Ultraviolet Meditations on Healing and Transformation. And it's only been a little bit over 2 weeks. So the launch day um, fun has sort of faded. And yeah, settling into the reality of being a published author. And it's been quite an interesting experience.
Well, congratulations on that. I know there can be a lot of different feelings in that. My novel is actually self-published too, so I'm sure in some other conversation we could compare all kinds of notes about what
Yeah,
that's
I
been
feel
like.
like that could be a whole other conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was so grateful that you were open to talking together about living in a body that either experiences or has experienced illness and how to navigate a creative life and a full life and a rich life while having physical limitations, or maybe also just while having a different attitude toward productivity culture and hustle culture and
Yeah,
all of that. Um, how would you feel about just starting out with like maybe each sharing what our journey has been like there with
sure. Do you
illness?
want to start or do you want me to?
What do you prefer, dear? I'm okay either way.
Okay, sure. I'll share mine. I'll go
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
So in 2023, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, which I have not really named publicly. That's something that's just been a personal call. And in 2024, I entered recovery, and my healing journey was quite profound. Um, I guess I could say that I experienced an awakening, and my poetry book that I mentioned depicts what that may look like from a from consciousness, from perspective, from a personal, emotional, psychological point of view. And alongside that, I have experienced a lot of up and downs in terms of trying to regain what we call a normal day to day lifestyle. But I have found that that may not be possible for me. I don't know. Maybe it's too early to tell. It's almost been 3 years, but I, have struggled with energy issues, fatigue. My body doesn't bounce back like it used to. Um, I experience flare ups after long periods of striving, and I have a different cognitive threshold overall. So I noticed that after prolonged periods of applying my mind, applying myself, striving, that my body shuts down and is like, nope, you're not going to work anymore. And I literally, for 3 to 4 days, I'm just doing nothing. I'm resting, I'm in bed. I can't really do much. And that's actually been a reality for me month to month um, for the past year, year and a half or so, almost a year and a half. Yeah, because after I entered recovery, there was a period where I was healing and I wasn't doing much. I was actually writing my book.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself was extremely healing. The pace in which I moved was very much slower. And I really had a lot of time for stillness and for my life did look a lot like when it was when I was unwell, when I was just moving very slowly.
Mhm.
So then once things started picking up again, I started seeing, am I going to go back to work, applying for jobs, this and that. And that's when these kind of flare ups started happening. So So today I'm just trying to figure out how to design my lifestyle
Mhm.
in a way that meets the reality of my current situation and my body's needs, while also figuring out how I can overcome it
Yeah.
without always looking at it as something I need to solve, because that in and of itself creates a lot of tension and resistance. So, yeah,
That's
that's
such a beautiful and nuanced question, like holding both this desire for greater physical healing, but not making that a sort of like, and then I'll be happy, and then I'll be okay. I will only focus on this. But like, how can you're asking too, how can you live meaningfully and sustainably right now?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to hear about your journey as well.
Yeah, there are certainly some parallels. So I was a very active and I thought healthy person, and then got COVID in March 2020, and like a lot of first waivers, got hit with long COVID really hard. And so the first couple years, I mean, I guess that I would use the word disability for sure to describe the first couple years, and it was I was tracking like 40 symptoms a day or something like that, but
Wow.
the main issues were energy and cognitive. Just if I pushed myself at all, then I would experience what you're talking about, just days in bed. Um, and just real struggles with brain fog and memory and holding thoughts together. There were many days when I couldn't drive because I couldn't remember how to get to my kids' school, that kind of thing. So it was intense, especially as a single mom, very intense. And I am really grateful to be as recovered as I am. I certainly have days where I don't really think about long COVID. I've some good days where it's like I still take my medications and I do this and that, but I don't have to think about it because I have changed my lifestyle so much. And hearing you talk about that experience of, okay, you felt relatively healed as you're writing this poetry book, but then trying to step back into a quote unquote normal life
Yes.
suddenly makes you more aware, it sounds like, of the
Mhm.
issues that are still there. And I can deeply relate to that because my life at this point really is designed around my capacity, and to a degree that I forget that sometimes, and so people will say, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I feel like I'm like 90% healed," and then I go, "Well, but if I was working a normal job, that would not be true." You know? Again, normal job. Um, and so my life really is designed in a lot of ways around my capacity. I've had an extra layer mix in this year where I've got, pinched nerves on both sides of my neck, and they are slowly pinching, but the nerves got damaged, and so I just have pain and some limitations in my use of my upper body, which is hard as a writer because
Oh, wow. Yeah.
typing uses your upper body. Um, so that's been an extra little complication that has been really hard, but has also reminded me of all the things I've learned the first time around with long COVID and taken me back to some things I had kind of forgotten that I actually didn't want to forget about what matters most to me and about the value of slowness and about how much there is to appreciate even in a very simple day where I don't get many things done. Um,
Yeah.
and it's all still a work in progress, right? And will always be, I'm
Yeah.
certain.
No, definitely. Yeah. I'm also curious to know how you design your life around your energy and your capacity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll certainly share what I'm trying to do from that point of view as well.
I think the best way to answer that for me is that the approach I've taken is just moving one little step at a time toward the next warm thing. Um, so, for example, when I got sick, I had already started writing my novel. I wasn't very far in, but I had started. And I kept trying to continue, tried to continue. And I was just hitting wall after wall after wall. Cognitively, I could not do it. But I knew I wanted to write. And I also knew how much it meant to me when I first started to find other people who had long COVID who could relate to my experience. And so I thought, well, I can't write a novel. That's too complicated right now, but I can write about my day-to-day experience. That's something that's within my cognitive capacity, and I can do that to reach out to other people. And so that felt warm. And that sort of led me to the next thing and the next thing, which led me to writing poetry. And then the novel did get finished in there too and published and all of that. But it's very much been a journey of just feeling my way from one warm thing to the next warm thing. And that's a very embodied practice. And I
Yeah.
am not a person who is historically very embodied. Um, so it's been a wild ride and a gift, both.
Yes. Yeah.
I
The
also want to say I know on some level that's a very dissatisfying answer because following one warm thing to the next warm thing to the next warm thing doesn't give you a 5-year plan. It doesn't give you a picture you can look at and go, "Oh, I see how this is going to work out."
yeah.
I have only literally just 6 years in, within the last month or so, reached a point where I go, "Okay, now I can see how I will be able to pay the bills for the year ahead." Without pulling money out of my IRA, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, there is income. It's not a lot, but I think it's just enough.
Yeah.
And strangely though, most of the time I haven't felt worried about that. I've just felt like it's not my job to worry about that. My job is one warm thing. How am I going to show up with love today? That's it. That's
Wow.
the focus.
I love that though, the way that you put that one thing to another. Well, that resonates with me. And I, yeah, I sort of can relate. Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you've said. So for me, before the illness, everything was quite linear from a productivity standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Wake up, you're like, ask yourself, okay, what do I need to get done today?
Yeah.
Right. And now I wake up and I ask myself, what's possible today?
Yeah.
Um, it's so different. Sometimes I have to remind myself of what I've been through and
Mhm.
give myself more grace, more self-compassion, because we all have a tendency in such a fast-paced world to just be like, "I gotta move on to the next thing. I'm not
Right.
doing enough. How will I achieve my dreams and my goals if I move at this pace?"
Yeah.
Right? So I'm constantly have to remind myself, bring that awareness in, check in with myself. And I do try to batch my days. So, for example, 2 to 3 times a week, I have high creativity or high output days.
Yeah.
And then one day is maybe like an integration day where it's a low output day. So
Yeah.
that could be editing, it could be admin, um, exercise, other things. And then I try to squeeze in a day of rest and
Mhm.
really consciously making an effort to not think about work because rest is not true rest if you're thinking about work. So that's
Yes,
also a
that's true.
challenge. Uh, and then so far, it has worked in some ways and it hasn't in others. It's, I just take it week to week. You know,
Yeah.
the goals change, this changes. I just try to do the best that I can.
Mhm.
Um, but so far, no matter what happens, once a month, I do get that flare up, and I'm like, okay, so I'm constantly experimenting with my schedule
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see if that will impact that in any way.
I don't know if this has like global truth to it or if it will resonate with you, but I want to share something that I come back to when I'm in a flare up that's a flare up big enough that I'm just on my back in bed or depending on what my neck is doing, whether I can lie on my back because sometimes I can't, whatever side of my body I can lie on. Um, I have had the experience over and over and over of being knocked down, whether it's by long COVID or now by the next stuff, or sometimes not being knocked down, but just being knocked totally out of creative productivity by the facts of being a mother of 3 kids, and that can be its own lovely derailment. Um, but over and over, I've had experiences where I felt like I wanted to be working. I needed to be working. I should be working. All the things, but I couldn't do it. And so many times I've had the experience that being stopped by whatever I was stopped by ended up propelling the work forward in ways I could not have expected and in ways that wouldn't have happened without that. To give one sort of strange example, I have a second novel that I'm not actively writing at the moment because of my neck challenges, but it's very much sort of happening in here and has been for a couple of years. And it has all of these different threads to it. It's historical fiction. It's going to be more complicated than my first novel, so it's a little daunting. And I couldn't see how all the threads were going to fit together. I just knew that there were these three separate storylines that I had sort of found by just following the warm thing. And I was obsessed with each of these storylines, but I couldn't see how they were one story in any way. And I, applied all of my intellect to that for months, couldn't figure it out. And then I was in a flare and I
Mhm.
had just really bad brain fog. I couldn't do anything cognitive. And I thought, well, I can't work on the book. It's useless. But I'm just going to sit here with some colored pencils and paper and just like doodle while I think about it. Like, or not even think about it. It was while I hold it in my heart, right? Like, I'm
Mm.
just going to hold the book in my body. I'm not going to think about it. And I'm just going to doodle. And I'm curious what'll happen on the page. And I am in this state where, again, I'm struggling to um, cook a meal because I put all the ingredients in either twice or not at all. And I leave stove on and I can't remember how to get to my kids' school and all those kinds of things. And I'm just sitting here doodling. And all of a sudden, it just landed like an epiphany. And I could see how the whole story came together,
Mm.
which makes no sense because my brain didn't work. And suddenly there it was. Um, but
Yeah.
I've had different versions of that kind of experience. Lying in bed, super sick, in and out of sleep, in and out of sleep, in and out of sleep. And I suddenly wake up and I can see some new creative thing or some personal insight that I needed that I wasn't going to arrive at if I'd had a linear, perfect, productive day. Um,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
try to hold that when I'm going into a down spell, when I have to climb back in bed. Like, the frustration is there, the disappointment is there, but I try to also, like, hold that space for you never know. You never know what might come of this.
Yeah, no, I love that. For me, I try to get bored as often as I can.
Yeah.
That's also so challenging. Put the phone in a drawer, sit there, stare outside the window. I bird watch a lot, so then that helps. I have something to look out for, and my best ideas or best phrases of a poem, all come during those periods of just doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
Um, so making more as much time as possible for that. But I understand again today we lead such busy lives. Um, Many of us have 9 to 5s, and how do we call in more, or how do we design our days so that we have more time for all of that? And it's so challenging.
Yeah.
I'm only able. I feel privileged that I can do that somewhat.
Yeah.
Still, uh, my life when I was unwell, was entirely just about that, right? My life was stripped down to just eating, sleeping, getting treated, and going on walks, and that is it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just, I always just ask myself, what would happen to my creative life if I was forced to go back to a more traditional
Mm.
work environment? What would happen?
Yeah.
I don't,
I mean, one thing that comes up for me hearing how you frame that is in that experience of illness, stripping everything down, and other things in a person's life can strip everything down. Your child having an addiction can strip everything down,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Or losing somebody you love can strip everything down. And suddenly it feels like there's only one thing. And sometimes there literally is only one thing. And sometimes it just feels like it, right? Everything else feels unimportant. The fact that that can happen, though, to me feels like this proof that I have to come back to over and over that a lot of the things that we tell ourselves we have to do, we do not have to do. Because, for any one of us, you say, here's my list of the things I've got to get done tomorrow. But guess what? If you wake up the next day and you have the stomach flu, you're not going to get all of
Mm.
those things done and the world's not going to end.
Right.
And if you wake up the next day and your house is burned down, you're not going to get those things done anytime soon. Not just that, not that day, but not for many days. And you will survive that. It won't be fun, but you'll survive it. And um, I don't want to be too flippant here. Like, I do get that there are things we have to do. And then there's a lot of things, though, that are in that sort of like gray area.
Mhm.
um, and in general, I think most of us assign more urgency and more importance to those things than actually serves our creativity or probably our happiness or our relationships or many of the other things that we value. And so the gift of illness is that it throws you into that like an ice bath and you see what's essential and what's not. And the gift of not experiencing illness is that you don't need to have the full ice bath, but
Right.
maybe you can choose some amount of it, some amount of insight on your own where you go, okay, here are the 10 things I have to do. Let's be real. Which two could I take off the list? Or which one, right? Which one of these things could I replace with 20 minutes in nature? Which
Right.
one of these could I replace with 20 minutes of writing poetry?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you, I've definitely had to audit like my lifestyle, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
you've obviously done that as well, figuring out what you can do without and
Yeah.
stronger boundaries, firmer boundaries, saying no,
Yeah.
even though you don't want to say no, just
Don't want to say no is so hard.
but you know what you have to do. And the thing for me is the people around you may not understand. And
Yeah.
that whole other challenge that I've
Mhm.
personally had. Um, they they do like loved ones do understand, but they don't really understand.
Yeah. If because they haven't lived it.
Yeah. So, for example, I got unwell right after I got married,
Mm.
like
That's hard
3
timing.
weeks after my wedding. I got diagnosed, and then after I entered recovery and everything, as a newly married couple, you want to do a lot of things. You want to be outgoing. You want to meet people. You want to just
Yeah.
be out together. But for me, though, I couldn't do that.
Mm.
And it took a lot of understanding from my husband's part to work with me on this. Um, and I think he understands a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a hard position to be in when you're dealing with illness, having to try to put in the effort to try to help other people understand is that can be heavy, can be
Mhm.
really heavy. Even if the person wants to understand and they're lovely, um, it's still work to try to make sure that that bridge is built and that they do understand that to the
Yeah.
degree they need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's work to forgive people for the fact that they'll never understand all the way and to accept that.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what are some of the things that you come back to at this point? If you're either when you're facing a flare up or reminding yourself that you need to avoid a flare up, what are some of the strategies or like reminders or mantras or any of that that you return to?
For me, meditation has always been a very grounding practice for me. I've been a long time meditator, but when I became unwell, I made a commitment to myself to meditate every single day, and I did that for an entire year almost.
Yeah.
And I believe, in part, that's what helped me get through it all in one piece. And so that practice is something I continue to do. Um, and even during periods of work or productivity, even if it's just for 10 minutes, it's amazing how rejuvenated you feel afterwards. You're really tired, you're mentally fatigued. Just sit there, meditate for just 10 minutes at the minimum, and you literally are so restored.
Yeah.
It's it's amazing. Uh, so aside from meditation, I think spiritually speaking, just not resisting each time that these flare-ups happen,
Yeah.
um, and not jumping to, "Oh my god, why is this happening again? How do I overcome this? Like, how do I prevent it from happening the next time?" Yes, you should strive to overcome it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but just not meeting the event each time with resistance or not showing yourself compassion, grace, for what's happening.
Yeah. For me with surrender, I found that playfulness and humor and curiosity, whenever I can muster them, are such great allies.
Yeah.
um, Even just the littlest bit. There's a very tiny poem I wrote that I probably remember off the top of my head that is essentially, I think I called it Surrender originally, and I wrote it when I was in a flare, and it was just, "Never mind then, I'll just pour myself in the bowl of the earth, let my heart be ladled about. There are worse fates than being delicious." And I didn't think I was gonna land on the word delicious, but as soon as I landed on the word delicious, it just made me giggle, and
Yeah,
something about that idea of, like, surrender is just like, "Alright, the universe is just eating me. It thinks I'm delicious." It just delighted me, and suddenly I could soften into that surrender. It's like the humor of that
yeah, I love that.
dropped me into surrender.
Yeah, that's great. No, I'm sorry, I completely forgot a major practice, which is, of course, poetry, right?
Mm, yeah.
Poetry is so healing as a practice. I've said this in another Substack chat, but because in terms of structure, it's relatively short. You know, you can sit down and complete a poem in a relatively short amount of time. And in that same vein, process whatever needs processing.
Mhm,
And that's incredibly healing. And poetry also has a way of bypassing the mind's defenses.
mm,
And it's often felt before it's understood, like somatically speaking. And there's so many times where I complete a poem and it's almost like I can just, it's like,
mhm.
how do you describe, you know, it's like a sense of relief.
Yeah.
It sink into my chair and I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I just, yeah, I don't know what I would do without
Mm.
it now that it's in my life because I never used to, write poetry before
I
the
was
rain.
just gonna ask that. So is that new to you post-illness?
Mhm.
Me as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I hadn't even read a book of poetry until I got
Mm,
sick,
yeah.
let alone written poetry.
Yep. Well, we're the exact same boat. Yeah,
Yeah.
common, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it has much of what you said has also been, I think, part of what has really pulled me into it is, um I mean, the brevity, right? Like, that's great. For our situations, that's a lot easier than writing a novel to write a poem. From an energy standpoint and many other standpoints, but also the way a poem can be anything. You know, a poem can be a story, a poem can be a question, and you grapple with it and you arrive at something. A poem can just be observations, it can be you dropping into your body and just
Yeah.
sensing the world. And a poem and writing a poem to me feels like such a deep invitation to presence.
Yes.
Like, whatever is, that's your ink. Now work with it.
Mhm.
And sometimes the ink is deeply uncomfortable and it's not fun, but it's still ink and you make a poem out of it. And sometimes it's lovely. It's birds at your window on a perfect, gorgeous day, and your body's feeling pretty good. And great, work with that ink.
Yeah.
So, yeah, poetry's been such a lifeline for me.
Yeah. No, same here. In fact, I just wrote a poem before this call because
Oh,
it's grounding, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's just based on it's experience I had with the morning dove this morning.
Mm.
So
How do you go about writing a poem? Like, what does that look like for you?
I well, the book that I wrote post illness that spoke directly to my experiences,
Yeah.
which and then my process today is a bit different. So whatever I find inspiring on a walk, it's usually based on an element of nature, most often birds. I have an affinity for birds. My spirit guide is a scrub jay
Ah.
who helped me throughout my illness. Uh, and so I usually look up the behavioral traits of the bird, what makes them unique. And then I tie that in somehow to an insight or a lesson that I've learned through
Mhm.
my I try to do that. It doesn't always land, the way that I would like, but that's pretty much my process.
I mean, I think that's one of the fun things about poetry is that it doesn't always land the way you
Yeah.
like, which sometimes means you think you're going to write a brilliant poem and then you're like, "Meh, no good." But other times it means the poem surprises you and takes you
Yeah.
somewhere you didn't expect. And the writing of the poem becomes part of the learning and part of the insight that you get to have,
Yeah.
rather than just a thing that you create after you have an insight about the fully formed insight. It becomes part of that insight generating process.
Yeah. What does your process look like?
Um, It can vary, but most of my poems end up written while I'm walking. I live on a farm in central Kentucky and can walk and walk for miles, usually without seeing anybody,
Oh, wow.
or
Mm.
without seeing any humans. I get to see lots of wild turkeys and deer and, many birds and occasionally a coyote. Saw a bobcat once. That was exciting. But yeah, I take my dog out, who is I love it because I get to feel like I'm being productive. Check the box. I walked my dog, but really I'm walking myself. Um, so, we do that every morning and he's very patient when I suddenly have to write something down and I'm just standing there in the field and he's just looking at me like, "How
Do you,
long
like, take out your phone and
I
put it
do.
in notes or
I do. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. And I sometimes fantasize about not doing that and taking a notebook and pen because, going back to what you said about boredom, I think we benefit from having less less clutter, less
Mm.
notifications, less mental distraction, and so I am always kind of trying to find ways to have my phone a little less attached to me, but I've had a couple experiences of walking or hiking in my life where I ended up really needing my phone, so I
Mm.
find it's hard to part
Yeah.
with that little, like,
Mhm.
safety of having that with me. So,
Mm.
but I also love the convenience of it, and then, all those images, they're right there, and so even if I don't write a full poem on the walk, I might just have 15 images that don't seem to have much to do with each other. So maybe the poem fully happens on the walk, or maybe I just have this list of images from literally every day. And then when I want to write a poem, if I'm at home and I'm like, I've got a little time, I'm going to sit down with a notebook, I'm going to write a poem, I can pull up my notes app and just start flipping through the images and see what grabs me. And then it's fun to see how things will connect in unexpected ways.
Mm.
Often I just start with a first line and I don't know where I'm going.
Okay.
It'll be an image about a bird. It'll be an observation about something happening around me, and I just write that and trust it to take me somewhere, and usually it does.
Yeah, nice. I also like a mantra that I say sometimes, just essentially saying, "Okay," I'll start a poem and then I'll say, "Okay, spirit, I'm handing it over to you. I'm
Mm,
gonna wait for your words."
mm,
And that helps because it takes off some of the weight of, thinking that you need to come up with it. Because
yeah,
in reality, I personally feel that, our words are being channeled from somewhere else. All of our creativity, no matter what kind of creative you are, whether a painter, sculptor, poet, we're all channeling
Yeah.
inspiration. And so I do like saying like a mantra, every once in a while to as part of the creative process.
I love that. And I think that language of channeling is so beautiful, and that rings really true to me. And I also think that even if that doesn't ring true for somebody, there is like an undeniable truth that's very closely adjacent to that, which is that like every 7 years, our bodies are completely replaced. The atoms in our bodies are completely replaced. I mean, we are so staggeringly interconnected. That's what I am made of now, I was not made of 7 years ago. But, maybe I'm made of things that were part of my houseplant over there and part of my dog an hour ago. And, that's just the reality is we're in this constant interchange with the whole world around us. And not to mention that we have, these genetic gifts and pieces of luggage from our ancestors and so much else. We obviously rely on the trees for our breath. We rely on the pollinators for our food. We rely on one another for everything. And so even just holding all of that, there's no scenario where any one person has ever written a poem,
Mhm.
like unaided.
Yeah.
Like, where does that person supposedly begin and end? We would have to answer that question first to give them full credit for the poem. And I don't think we can do that. I don't think a person has a sharp, delineatable ending, beginning. So, whether we're sort of like a conduit and something is being poured into us from some external source, or whether we're just a web that is so interwoven that you really can't point at any one thing and say, this is that, and this is this other thing. Um,
Yeah.
in either case, there's not really any space for ego or for thinking that you can go it alone in creativity. And of course, we all still manage to have ego. But um, the truth of it to me seems to be all about interconnection and things bigger than us and beyond us that we don't understand.
Mhm. Yeah, in my own experience, I also had that sort of profound awakening of how interconnected we are, uh, and also sort of had I guess you could call a remembering of, where I felt so deeply connected to the earth and my surroundings.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I have a special connection to birds and like I can communicate with them. And really also realizing that we're never truly alone, and um, we have our spirit guides and the divine that is there, and we can co-create the reality that we want to see. And so we're inherently powerful, and we forget that. And so my illness was that awakening of to remind me of how powerful each and every one of us are. Um, and I've also realized, when you heal, when you go through any kind of initiation and healing, and um, as you heal, that ripples outward,
Yeah.
and you're healing others. And
Mhm.
so it's pretty powerful to think about, the impact that each and every one of us has. And we
Yeah.
forget that, or we're not aware of it at times. Or
Yeah.
we move through life not aware of that and the potential. Um,
Mhm. I love that. And I try to come back to that, remembering like being a healed or healing person in the world is healing for those around you and for the world around you. And another sort of way in which I have to return to that is I sometimes, and this happens more when I'm kind of feeling better and I'm like, "Oh, shouldn't I push myself more then? Because now I'm feeling a little better, so we better really up the level here," even though I've learned multiple times, like, "Nope, that will bring you back down, so just hold steady." It's hard to I'm a person who wants to do everything, and so it's hard to have limitations, but sometimes I will get a little stuck in a thought pattern like, who am I to get to move so slow and like gently through the world when
Yeah.
everybody else has to rush around and be stressed? Like, no
Yeah.
fair for me to take such good care of myself when other people are suffering so much. Like, it seems a little self indulgent. It seems a little selfish, right? And I have to come back to that. You know what? The world would benefit from more people who are relaxed. The world would benefit from more people who are delighted by the bird outside. The world would benefit from more people who are not carrying stress that they're just like spilling out on the people around them. We need that. And
I love
um,
that.
so I try to come back to that one, like, not selfish, not selfish. I'm just trying to be one calm place in the world.
Yeah, well, I love that. It is hard not to feel a little guilt or a little
Mhm.
feel like you're being self-indulgent, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah. The cultural messaging is pretty powerful. You know,
exactly.
spend your whole life in it. It doesn't undo itself in a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ah. This has been so lovely, Maya. I know that we wanted to leave a little time in case people have questions that they want to type in the chat, but is
Yeah.
there anything else that you want to share prior to that?
Um, I oh, yeah, I did wanna mention knowing your energy ceiling is helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know yours. You probably
Well,
but
no, because mine is so variable, and I feel like that is its own challenge.
I see.
Oh. Yeah, but say more about that.
Right. So I think, like, pre-illness, I would say I'd be able to work 5 hours per day, like, say, Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
where I was efficient. So that means you're productive, I guess, you're concentrating, you're focused, you're getting things done. You're not daydreaming, you're not distracted, you're not feeling tired, you're just there's a cognitive spike and you can work for 5 hours. Not straight, just in any given day.
Yeah.
Now I'd say mine looks like 3.5 to 4
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
average,
Yeah.
which is, to me, a big difference, right?
Mhm.
But knowing that, it is helpful to prioritize your deep work. Um, and for me, mornings are best. I think many people prefer mornings for their deep work, uninterrupted deep work. Um, you're not doing things like admin or uh, other things.
Yeah.
But just knowing that also helps you design your days. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and being honest with yourself about that rather
yeah,
than crashing against that
yeah,
limit.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things for me that I've noticed is as part of my healing, there was a point where it's like I just had to be in bed so much, right? And then I've reached a point where it's like I can do X amount of deep work, and it does vary for me day to day. Right now, I'm in a place where my bigger limit is pain, and then also just knowing if I aggravate the nerves in my neck too much, they don't heal. So it's not just, oh, I'm uncomfortable. It's like I am eroding my progress if I continue. So I can really generally just write in 20 or 30-minute increments. And
Okay.
I'm really happy if I get 2 to 3 hours in a day. That's a really good day at this point. But it's interesting being in a place where the cognitive limit is not what's hitting me first. It's the
Mhm.
other stuff.
Okay.
But I find that for me, just really being intentional about what I'm doing the rest of the day so that
Yeah.
I'm nourishing myself and filling myself up as much as I can and doing things that are deeply aligned with my values and lighting me up means that when I come to that space where I can work, things move faster, more happens, inspiration flows um, more than it would have if I then, said, oh, now the pain's too bad. I'm going to lie in bed and scroll on my phone. Right. So
Yeah. For me, it's
whatever
cognitive piece, and for you, it's more physical.
at the moment it is, but that can vary. I certainly, the brain fog still comes back up. It's just at the moment, it's behaving itself nicely. Yeah. And I do think that that goes back to the surrender piece, and I don't know if you experience that kind of variability, but for me, my health does still have a little bit of that roller coaster feeling where I have stretches where I am doing what much better and I expand what I do and I expand my capacity, but then I have to be ready to bring it back down again. And you don't always know. I mean, you never know when that's going to happen. And so
Mhm.
there's a fresh round of acceptance and surrender each time. And
Yeah.
I'm faster at getting to that.
Yes.
Um, but it
Same.
doesn't mean it's seamless.
Yes. Same here. I don't think it'll ever go away. I think there will always be a little bit of
A
this.
wobble.
Yeah, the wobble. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's okay. I mean, it goes back to what you talked about earlier with self compassion. Like, of course, this is hard. Of course, I'm wobbling. Um,
Yeah.
just accepting that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did talk about like this a sustainability audit, and I'm curious how that ties in with the energy ceiling. Like thinking about a bigger question of what feels sustainable in your life. Is it kind of
Yeah.
that same question about mapping out, like, here's how much I can do in a day, or does it feel like a different question for you?
Yes, it's largely that.
Yeah.
Each day I wake up, it does look a little different. Um, I may set out to do more and then only achieve half of that, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, it's just flexibility, just being flexible and understanding and doing the best you can. Um, I see these things as momentary situations, like the illness and now whatever flare ups that are happening, they will pass. Your situation will pass. It's it's just doing the best that we can and accepting our realities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes for me, it's also helpful to come back to the moment I'm in and say, okay, you don't like this, but can you do another minute of it? And it's like, oh, yeah, I could do another minute of this. That's fine. Can you do an hour? Usually, yeah, no problem. I mean, unless I'm talking like 10 out of 10 nerve pain, which thankfully hasn't happened since January or so. Um, the answer to that question is always like, yeah, I'm fine. I can do another day of this. I can do a week of it. I can do, um, and it helps me to come back to that and out of that story of, oh my gosh, I need this to change.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
because life will change. But for me, I don't know that I don't really expect that I'll ever be bouncing around with quote unquote perfect health again. I've been in this with long COVID for more than 6 years. And the next stuff is, significant enough that it will probably always be some part of my life. I'm hoping it'll just become a
mhm,
quieter, smaller part of my life going forward. Um, and I think for me, it feels important both to hold the possibility of recovery and to hold but look, I'm okay. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I've had a lot of lovely moments today, even with this.
right,
Like, and holding both of those feels like an elixir for sanity for me.
yeah. Holding the joy and the grief together. That's how we
Yeah.
move through life.
Yeah, holding the
Mhm.
possibility and limitation because they both always exist in every moment.
Of course.
Yeah. And poetry is lovely for that, holding those inherent
Oh yeah.
tensions. Yeah. Well, shall we open things up to questions
Sure.
if anybody
Yeah.
has any?
Anybody
Yeah.
has a question for either of us?
Yeah. Feel
Happy
free
to.
to drop anything in the chat.
Oh wow, I think somebody just joined.
I think I can scroll. I'm curious if I can. Oh, yeah. So I'll just say hello to everybody. So even if we don't get any questions, thank you for being here, Alan and BB, Ralph, Roger, NEQ, and I hope I'm saying your name right, Farid. Um, Thank you all. And Farid, thank you so much for your comments.
And Christiana and yes, thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah. And you don't have to have questions. Reflections are also very welcome if you have things you want to share from your own experience or things that stood out to you. Um, Let me ask Maya while we're waiting to see if anybody has anything they want to ask or share. Do you have, I mean, not to like put some productivity push on here, so I hope this doesn't land that way, but do you have a next project in mind after now that Ultraviolet is out in the world?
Well, at the moment, I'm simply just focusing on building presence for the book.
Mm.
Uh, I have realized that it's a long-term game, and, I had a little bit of some misconceptions around the publishing process, and, after launch, it's like a very interesting, um, reality,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, alongside that, I do a little bit of consulting work, which I try to balance out with the book and
Mhm.
the writing and the poetry. I'd love to write a second book of poetry. I've written some poems for it. I'm hoping it does turn into something substantial where I can call it a book. We'll see. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much what I have.
Yeah.
going on.
No,
How
that I
about
mean,
you?
that's a lot, managing a book baby out in the world and your consulting work and just continuing to write poems. That's and healing your body.
Yes.
That's a
Mm,
lot that you have on your plate. Plus the
yeah.
whole being a wife thing and probably a friend and all kinds of other things as well.
Yeah. No, thank you for mentioning healing the body because I always tend to put that behind the book
Mm,
and the consulting work,
mhm.
you know?
The big one.
It's right up there with everything else.
Yeah. 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 These bodies of ours, I guess all the things we've done, we couldn't have done without them, even
No,
with the
if
challenges.
we don't have this in one piece, then we can't pursue anything anyways.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
keep reminding myself that every day.
Yeah.
The health is like
Mhm.
number one priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you? What are you?
Um,
Well, you mentioned your novel,
yeah.
your second
Yeah,
novel.
so I've got a novel out in the world and I think you have a better strategic mind than I do. I think my attitude has been like, there it is. If people find it, great. If not, I guess it wasn't meant to be, which every now and then I'll have these little like bursts of like feeling like my characters are like, Lisa, we want people to know us. You need to do more. So I do a little bit with that. I just had a reading at an independent bookstore here this past weekend. Actually, David Sedaris is about to read at the same bookstore. So I'm just going to tell people I
Nice.
opened for David Sedaris by 10 days, but it's sort of an opening. So I'm doing a little bit with that. And then I have my new job, which I am so excited about and love. And it's writing and publishing a magazine
What?
for folks with developmental disabilities and their families and caregivers. And it's just for the state of Kentucky. Um,
Well, that
and
sounds
it's just
good.
twice a year. So it's like, I'm like, okay, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about that. And then I have a poetry collection and you know, I've just sort of, I submitted it a few places. It didn't get accepted. And I've put it on a shelf and I'm going to come back to it. But I'm sort of getting this first magazine issue done. And then I'm going to go back with fresh eyes to the poetry collection. But I'm also writing poetry every day.
No.
So, and then I have the second novel that's only living in my head, not on the page. I'm trying to keep a corner for it at all
Mhm.
times. And
Would
then
you consider self-publishing again, the poetry book?
Um, yes. Yes. Yeah, I would. The thing I love about self-publishing is that you just get to do it in the way that works with your health, your body, your integrity, your interests, all of that. You don't have to wait a bazillion years for the book to come out. I love all of that.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing I would have loved to have gotten to have the experience of with my novel that I didn't get to have is working with an editor. I would have loved to have gotten to see what I could learn in that process. I had beta readers and friends, who read and gave me feedback, and that was really helpful. But I would love, I'm not a trained writer. I don't have a major in English or an MFA or any of that, and so I would love to have that experience.
Okay.
Um, and so, I've only submitted my poetry collection to a couple places that I chose carefully and was really excited. And they were contests. So the odds weren't great, you know? So I'll probably submit it to more after doing a revision, but I don't think I would feel sad if I end up going the self-publishing route instead. And I might even just choose to do that just because of the efficiency.
Yeah.
Um, because I write so many poems, and so part of me is like ready to move the first book into the world and be working on
Yeah.
another one.
Plus,
Uh,
you'd have to do the marketing anyways. Even if you
exactly.
go traditional publisher, indie
Yes.
publisher, you still have to
Yes.
do the marketing. Um,
And one thought I had there with my novel is I thought, if I have a traditional publisher, I'll have to do the marketing, but I'll have a sense of external pressure to do the marketing and to do it in the way that somebody else thinks I should do it.
yeah.
If I just publish it myself, I don't have that external pressure that I don't think my body's going to respond well to. I will just think about what's in my values here. And yeah. And so, like, I love doing readings. That's really fun because it connects me with people, like, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't sell a billion, like, "Okay, we sold 5 books, yay!" But it was so fun, like,
Yeah.
um, so I love things that connect me with people, and I can focus on that, and if the book makes its way into the world, great, and if it doesn't, you know what? I loved writing it so much that that was already gift enough. Just the experience of
Mhm.
getting to write it, I already won. I already
Yeah.
won because I got to do that, and I loved that so much, and so anything else is icing on the cake, and I just wanna be mindful to do enough effort in putting it out there that I'm, like, honoring the characters, even though I know they're not real, and honoring, like, whatever source the inspiration came from. So,
Mhm.
for me, I try to frame it not as "I need to sell more books," but more as, "I wanna honor the source that this came from by showing that I will do this thing that's uncomfortable for me," because even just putting a picture of my novel with a link and saying, "Buy my book" on the bottom of my Substack feels uncomfortable to me. Like, I am
Really?
not a marketer.
Okay, yeah.
I'm a like, "Hey, let's talk, let's be friends." I'm not a, "Hey, buy my thing" person. I just have always found that so hard. Um,
Well, I have yet to do a physical reading, and now I'm
mhm.
turning more outwards, so not just digital marketing, but now I'm hoping to do some events and live readings and things like that. So for me, that's not my comfort zone, whereas for you, that is.
That is mine. Yeah. I'm just
So,
very comfortable with
um,
people. So,
okay.
yeah.
I was in hermit mode for so long, and I just feel like I'd rather not. But, um,
Well, we need to somehow give each a little bit of our relative strengths.
yeah, no, I'd love to get a few tips from you, and I can more than happy to give some
Love that.
digital marketing tips. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this was so lovely, Lisa.
It
I
really was.
really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. It feels really special just to get to sit with somebody who I think clearly understands so much of my lived experience and can
Yeah,
relate to
same
it.
here. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all so much. And I'll send this out like as my next post. So this weekend I'll include the link for this and you'll be tagged on it on my end. Yeah. And anybody who wants to watch who missed maybe part of this can come back and find it that way.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.